Hello and welcome. It's 10 a.m. on Friday, the 23rd of January. You're tuned into our mid-morning newscast here on Arirang TV. Thanks ever so much for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. The European Central Bank takes out the bazooka with a massive stimulus package aimed at firing up the stagnant eurozone and warding off deflation. In a video message to the World Economic Forum in Davos, President Park Geun-hye calls for patience as North Korea appears in no hurry to come back to the negotiating table. Plus, Saudi officials confirm King Abdullah has died at the age of 90. His younger brother, Crown Prince Salmon, has been named as his successor. Our top story this morning, the European Central Bank has announced the details of its massive stimulus package in a desperate attempt to stop the flagging eurozone shuddering to a halt. The central bank says it's going to inject roughly $1.25 trillion into financial markets. Shin Se-min starts us off.
The European Central Bank says it's going to buy an unprecedented amount of bonds, pumping money into the stagnant eurozone economy. The central bank said Thursday that its purchases of government and private sector bonds worth 60 billion euros, or roughly $68 billion will begin in March and continue through at least September of next year, or even longer. The total will reach some $1.3 trillion, much more than the $568 billion initially expected. Speaking in Frankfurt on Thursday, ECB President Mario Draghi said the central bank would also keep eurozone interest rates at 0.05%. The decision comes as the eurozone is showing signs of going into a deflationary spiral. It's hoped the massive stimulus will improve the bloc's sluggish exports and channel more investments into stocks.
We want to take a decision that would mitigate the concerns that many participating countries in the euro area have about the unintended fiscal consequences.
The ECB money will also include some existing programs. Countries like Greece and Italy will be included under a bailout program, but with some additional criteria, as such countries have worse economic conditions. The announcement stunned traders, with most markets across Europe posting gains. Stocks on Wall Street also reacted positively. On the currency markets, the euro slumped to an 11-year low of $1.13 against a greenback. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Now, President Park Geun-hye says South Korea is going to remain patient with North Korea as Seoul continues to wait for Pyongyang to come back to discussions aimed at easing tensions on the Korean Peninsula. In a video message to hundreds of global CEOs at a Korea night function on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum in Davos, the president said Seoul will patiently seek dialogue and cooperation with the North, and it will work to make unification a reality. Her latest comments come a matter of days after she asked the government to try and create the optimum conditions for North Korea to come forward for dialogue. On the economic front, President Park said the global economy needed to find new growth momentum, adding that she hoped the forum would come up with some productive measures. Korea's Supreme Court has upheld a lower court ruling of 9 years in prison against former National Assembly Representative Lee Seok-gi of the now disbanded Unified Progressive Party for violating the country's national security law. Ji Myung-gil reports.
At the close of a 17-month trial, former Unified Progressive Party member Lee Seok-gi was found guilty of instigating a rebellion among members of a secretive pro-North Korea group called the Revolutionary Organization.
Defendant Lee Seok-gi is found to be guilty of instigating a rebellion among members of a shadowy pro-North Korea group. However, he is acquitted of conspiracy charges due to a lack of evidence.
Prosecutors alleged that Lee had discussed plans to blow up major facilities in South Korea last year, such as communication lines and railways, with 130 members of the underground group. The top court also found Lee guilty of sympathizing with North Korea, which is a violation of South Korea's national security law banning any anti-state activities. However, the court ruled that there was not enough evidence to prove that the revolutionary organization actually existed. The court said the evidence was solely based on the testimony of informants. Right after the ruling was issued, both the ruling's Haenuri Party and the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy said they respected the court's decision. However, the ruling party said Lee should have been found guilty of both sedition and conspiracy, while the opposition party said the court's decision should have come before a ruling last year that disbanded the Unified Progressive Party. Lee was a member of the UPP, which was indicted on charges of conspiring with members of the revolutionary organization. All 5 of the party's lawmakers, including Lee, lost their parliamentary seats last December when the party was dissolved. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Now, as the days pass and evidence continues to drip out, it's seeming more and more likely that the young Korean man who went missing roughly 2 weeks ago on the Turkey-Syria border may have in fact joined the extremist group Islamic State. There are growing concerns in Korea that as more information emerges, other disillusioned young Koreans might be tempted to head to the region as well. Kwon So-ah reports.
Social networking services like Twitter and Facebook helped the young Korean who went missing in Turkey nearly 2 weeks ago to learn about and possibly even join the Islamic State group. It may have all started as curiosity when the 18-year-old Kim typed in words like Islamic State, Islam, and Syria into a search engine. So the concern is that as easy as it was for Kim to just turn on the computer and type, for young Koreans, falling into the arms of terrorists could be just a few clicks away. Kim's Twitter has been attracting a lot of followers in recent days, raising a red flag for authorities.
These days, you just type in the words and it's easy to find information.
I'm pretty sure that the Korean teenagers, including the Kim boy, had no idea how violent the ISIS is and how gruesome they are and what the ISIS philosophy is, because
Dr. Chang says the IS has 2 main recruitment strategies. One is designed for hardcore devoted Muslims, the other targets those who seek money. She says it's highly likely that Korean teenagers are targeted as the IS knows there is high cyber penetration among the group, making them more vulnerable.
And I think there are very significant asymmetry within the Korean society. Unfortunately, our society, especially Korean media, are highly only focusing on the Korean Peninsula issue and Northeast security issue.
Experts say Korean society has to expand its perspective and awareness in order to provide young people with enough information on the truth about Islamic terrorist groups and be more vigilant about internet censorship. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
The Korean economy grew at the slowest pace, its slowest pace in more than 2 years in the 4th quarter of last year. The Bank of Korea says the domestic economy expanded just 0.4% in the October to December period from a quarter earlier. The central bank attributes the slowdown to a drop in exports that edged down 0.3%, due in large part to the slowing Chinese economy. It also cited exceptional factors like the fall in government spending that dragged down construction investments by more than 9%. Now, for the whole of 2014, Asia's 4th largest economy, Korea, grew 3.3% from a year earlier, a pickup from 3% growth posted in 2013, but actually far below the 4% growth the Bank of Korea forecast a year ago. And Korea's largest automaker, Hyundai Motor, says its net profit tumbled 22% in the 4th quarter of last year. Hyundai also reported that net profits for the whole of last year came to $7 billion. That's actually down 15% on year and the lowest the Korean automaker has logged since 2010. The slumping profits came despite sales actually rising about 8% on year. Hyundai blamed the results on the strong Korean won and the extra incentives it gave US customers to try and boost sales there. As for this year, Hyundai says it expects sales to grow 1.8%. Korea's Samsung Electronics has launched a budget-friendly addition to its popular Galaxy line of smartphones. It's called the A5, and while it's cheaper than Samsung's other smartphones here in Korea, it's still got that premium feel, our Kim Min-ji reports.
The Galaxy A5, the latest addition to Samsung's lineup of low-end smartphones.
You can pick one up for roughly $450. That's about 40% cheaper than Samsung's flagship S-series.
Despite its lower price, the model still boasts a full metal body and features a 5-megapixel camera and a 5-inch high-definition Super AMOLED display. And the sellers have high hopes.
The quality is pretty outstanding considering the price, and given the high price of other smartphones, including the Apple iPhone, we believe it will sell well.
But consumers, on the other hand, have mixed opinions. I think low-end smartphones are cheap, obviously, because they lack quality. It's not like something you use once, so I'm not really interested.
I'm interested in the new model. My phone bills are usually high, and with this phone, I can save a lot of money right off the bat because of the low price.
Samsung's move to diversify the price ranges of its smartphones comes amid its earnings concerns hurt by fierce competition from its rivals, such as Apple and Xiaomi. Its market share stood at 28% last year, down 4.5% from a year ago. It's still number one, but Chinese companies are catching up fast.
As high-end smartphones don't have many new features to offer now, and as the difference in quality between the two narrows, the low-end market will become the mainstream.
With that said, Samsung recently launched a new low-end smartphone in India that runs on its own operating system, Tizen. The Z1 model costs just 5,700 Indian rupees, or roughly $90. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, topping the rest of the international news we are following this morning, King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia has died at the age of 90. For more, we connect to Eunice Kim at the news centre. Eunice, the king's successor has already been named.
That's right, Mark. King Abdullah had been ill and in the hospital for pneumonia and a lung infection, paving the way for the king's 79-year-old half-brother, the now King Salmon, to take on some of the monarch's responsibilities days earlier. Now, Saudi state TV did announce just hours ago that King Abdullah has died at 1 a.m. on Friday and that he would be succeeded by Prince Salmon, now King Salmon. King Abdullah was known as a leader who tried to modernize his very conservative society, namely by building a more skilled workforce amid Saudi Arabia's growing youth population and also opening up more opportunities for women, including the Advisory Shura Council, which advises the government as well as the king, and also appointing the country's first female deputy minister back in 2009. He was, however, staunchly against the pro-democracy movement in the Middle East, and historically, close relations with Washington had also their marked times of tension. King Abdullah, at 90 years old, leaves behind more than 30 children and about a dozen wives.
And Eunice, Saudi Arabia is, of course, a key country in the region, and it remains to be seen what kind of changes lie in store for the kingdom after King Abdullah's death. And while we're in the Middle East, sticking to the region, just south of Saudi Arabia is Yemen, and that country really no longer has any government to speak of following the resignation of its president.
Right. President Abed Rabo Mansur Hadi was a figure widely supported by the international community, including Saudi Arabia, and his departure would have huge implications for the U.S.-led war against Islamic extremism as well, Mark, with the influential al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, of course, being based in Yemen, and also the Islamic State now actively recruiting there, according to reports. Now, in his resignation letter, President Hadi had said he reached a deadlock with the Shiite militants who reportedly pressured him to give a televised address to the people and also asked for appointments in his government. Houthi militants also did not pull back from the presidential palace and residence on Thursday, as had been agreed in a late-night tentative peace deal. The Yemeni parliament did reject the president's resignation and said that it would hold an emergency session on Friday.
And Eunice, time is running out for Japan, which is grappling how to free those 2 Japanese hostages being held by Islamic State. The situation is looking extremely grim now.
Extremely grim and difficult is the word Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga used to describe it. And yes, the Japanese government believes the deadline is due to expire at 2:50 p.m. local time today. Secretary Yoshihide Suga said all efforts were being made to save the hostages, but that Tokyo has yet to make contact with the IS militants to confirm the safety of the 2 men. The Islamic State had demanded a $200 million ransom for the release of freelance journalist Kenji Goto and contractor Haruna Yukawa. The extremist group has, of course, previously killed 3 Americans and 2 Britons. It featured in similar videos, many hoping that that is not the end to these 2 friends. Reports saying that the journalist Kenji Goto, who is expecting his 2nd child, had returned to Syria in late October to search for his friend Haruna Yukawa, who went missing in Syria 2 months earlier.
Now, in the final part of our special series on startups in Korea, we meet with Lee Han-ju, who's the founder of Global Accelerator, a company called Spark Labs. The company helps Korean startups go global by offering to link them with Silicon Valley while also providing funding, mentoring and office space. So far, it has helped some 30 startups get off the ground. Our Lee Ji-yoon sat down with Lee Han-ju and asked him what he thinks the Korean government should do to better help the country's startups.
Korean economy has a long tradition of cooperation between the private sector and the government. In fact, a lot of the chaebols, if you look at their history, got their start because of the Korean government support. However, what I see is that there's not enough support yet towards the early stage startups. And early stage startups are probably the riskiest form of investments. But it must be done because that's where the innovation and that's where all the excitements and that's where the next 10 years of Korea will be defined by. I know the government is planning to do more. It's a matching program where private sector VCs like us make a selection and we say we're going to invest in this company and the government comes in and do a matching program. So it's a co-investment. So I think that's a great idea because the private sector guys are probably good at selecting the winning ideas, and the government can bring their muscle and actually help to accelerate that growth.
Then there must be some improvements that could be made, though, in the current system to better help startups. So what's your opinion on that?
Take one example of fintech. So fintech, it's a short for financial tech. Probably the most famous example of that is PayPal, or nowadays Alipay, or what you see with Apple 6, iPhone 6, with the Apple Pay, internet banking. A lot of that you don't see in Korea yet, and that's because of some of the financial regulations that are in place. But it's time to rethink those. Otherwise, Korea will be left behind. There's a huge revolution happening around the financial industry, technology. Revolutionizing the way people pay, way people exchange money, and that's a big business. Financial industry is a huge business, and Korea should not be left behind simply because we cannot imagine how to redo the regulation. So I think Korea needs to become really, really aggressive in terms of redoing the regulation around financial industry so that we could also have innovations around fintech.
What advice do you have for future startups or for those considering to start one but really can't because they don't really have that courage?
Yeah, just do it. Having gone through all those thought processes, there comes a time when you have to pull the trigger. I think we as a society needs to take a risk. For example, I think Korean moms need to become a little bit more tolerant of their kids trying a startup. Working for big corporations is not the only way for your children to succeed. Becoming a doctor and lawyer is not the only way for your kids to succeed. In fact, they could make a big difference by starting a startup. So do it, take risk, but if you're going to do it with the right frame of mind.
That was our Lee Ji-eun there speaking to the head of a global startup accelerator here in Korea. Now, we do have some news just coming in. The presidential office of Cheong Wa-dae has just announced that President Park has nominated Lee Wang-gu, who is the current floor leader of the ruling Saenuri Party, as the new prime minister to replace Jung Hong-won as prime minister. The office has also announced a shake-up of some of the presidential close aides. And we'll bring you details on this in our next newscast at noon.
And TGI Friday, everyone, as we kick things off with our 2015 Asian Cup coverage. And of course, on Thursday, the undefeated Korean national football team looked to make it fourth straight, heading into the quarterfinals against Uzbekistan. And of course, scoring problems continue for the Korean national team as they failed to score in the first 90 minutes of the match. But the Korean defense also shuts down Uzbekistan as the match goes into extra time, and there, 13 minutes into the extra time, sensational Son Heung-min heads one in, giving Korea the 1-0 lead. Before this next play here, Cha Duri storming through the right side, unstoppable before passing it over to Son Heung-min for the double, as Korea wins this match 2-0 and advances to the semifinals. Now, many would agree that if there's one major league team that most Koreans love, it's the LA Dodgers. And now reports are coming out that a group of Koreans are planning to purchase a portion of the team. Now, with one of the owners putting up their 20% of the share for sale, a group of Koreans who call themselves Korea Consortium are looking into purchasing that 20%. With NBA legend Magic Johnson and the Guggenheim Group purchasing the Dodgers for $2.15 billion from Frank McCourt back in 2012, 20% of the share will come out to roughly $400 million, an amount the consortium has already made available. Of course, it's not the first time a Korean group has tried to purchase the team. Eland also tried to bid for the team back in 2012. Now, winter training is in full swing in the KBO, with all 10 KBO teams preparing for the 2015 season. But it's not just the players getting ready for the new season. The umpires are also busy with their winter training camp. Of course, one of the biggest controversies in the KBO in the past 2 seasons were all the blown calls, and that leading up to the introduction of video replays in order to prevent them from happening. And just last year, 40.8% of the calls were reversed after video replay, an alarming percentage. So while the players are training overseas, the umpires are holding their own winter camp in Icheon as they hope to lower the percentage to under 40% in 2015. Now, if you're a fan of volleyball here in the nation, you're probably enjoying one of the most exciting seasons in the recent memory. Well, that's because going into the All-Star break this weekend, the competition has been intense, both in the men's and women's V-League. Now, with the All-Star game set to take place on the 25th so far, both leagues are seeing quite the parity in the league standing, as the Samsung Hwajae Blue Fangs are no longer dominating the men's league with a slim 7-point lead over OK Savings Bank, and KEPCO, Korean Air, and Hyundai Capital all fighting for third place. Meanwhile, over on the women's league, an even tighter race as Korea Expressway, Hyundai Hill State, and IBK all in arm's reach of each other in the league standings. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Unseasonably mild winter weather continues today in much of the peninsula, and as we can see, temperature readings in Seoul are nearly 5 degrees higher than the seasonal averages. So the weather will be quite generous, even nicer than yesterday, thanks to the plenty of sunshine that will shine down on us throughout the day, and we should have a good quality air as well. And as for today's temperatures, the daytime high in Seoul will peak at 5, while Daegu and Gwangju rise to 8 this afternoon. And as for the other regions, Jeju Island should see a high of 9, while Daejeon and Tokdo rises to 6 and 3 respectively. That's all for the weather. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Jiyeon, for the weather. That's all we have for now. Plenty more stories online, and we'll be back with our next newscast at noon Korea time. Until then, goodbye.